I asked Dana this the other day. How do you believe you became this huge star? You've been the same guy from, I remember covering you back in the Strikeforce days, right? You're no different, and yet all of a sudden everything you do, you have so much attention, people following you. What do you think was the difference in your career that elevated you where you are now?
I think part of it is that, people have seen me grow up since 18 years old. You can see me on TV doing interviews. So I'm 37, about to be 38, and in a little bit, that'll be 20 years professionally fighting. Just put my hard head on, put my mouthpiece, and getting to work. I've had a lot of stumbles, and I think people relate with that a lot because I've came back even harder every time I've fallen. I've learned more, I've submerged myself more in the sport, and I think people love that, mixed with the violence that I bring, because to tell you the truth, and it shows people are not tuning in for guys like this idiot that I'm gonna fight because they don't really care for all that,
Right.
They just want to see a fight, man. This is not that sport where it's more novelty based, more reality TV, more novels based. This is a sport where people want to see beautiful technique, they want to see action, they want to see violence. And I've tried to do that since my Strikeforce days to now, just to give everything that's inside of me to take out the other opponent. It's never personal, but it is what it is, basketball game. A certain team is putting 50 points on another team's head, separation. Wow, you're talking about that team, this and that. It's the same thing in fighting. I got to just knock you out, send you to the hospital on a stretcher, and people will talk about that and get behind that,
The picture, I'm sure you've seen it on social media this week where you're holding the sign, "We'll fight for food" and everything. How long ago was that?
That was right from Strikeforce. You're talking about Strikeforce. Me coming over from Strikeforce, the UFC was playing games with my ass like always. Have been about 9 to 10 months. They hadn't given me a fight, and everybody's getting booked all across, getting fights. Obviously, this is my livelihood. This is my job. Man, it was a bad time. That picture, actually, though I was making light and joke of it, I was dead ass broke. Doing odd jobs, still training.
And that's the question becomes, you were 28 years old then. That was about 10, 11 years ago, yeah. And you're here you are, dead ass broke. An exciting fighter, a quality fighter, a guy that had the persona. Like, how come you hadn't hit at that point?
I'll be straight honest with you, man. And it wasn't until like months ago that the UFC got behind me. They didn't give a fuck about me then. I had beaten everybody in Strikeforce except one guy, Gilbert Melendez. We went to a 5-round fight, and all the guys that I had beaten came over and fought ranked opponents. The UFC, not only did they bring me in much later, but they didn't give me a ranked opponent after unranked. As a matter of fact, I never fought a ranked fighter at 155, though I beat many great guys that did become ranked fighters that did challenge for titles and stuff at 155. So I just think for the longest time, UFC really was just kind of blackballing me to a certain extent, and that's what took so long for me to make that pop. Because as soon as I started fighting ranked fighters, boom, knocking people out. People were talking about me. Who is that guy? Is he a newcomer? No. This guy's got like 35 fights, man. This guy's been doing it for a while. Why didn't the UFC push him? And the UFC wasn't pushing me even when I fought Ben Askren. They weren't really pushing me. You could see the spotlight was on Ben, the undefeated guy coming on over. I sold that night, And then since there, UFC started to see like, wow, this guy's drawing in big crowds. Maybe we do get behind him. So that's when it started to make a shift.
Do you think part of it, when you were on your rise in the UFC, Conor McGregor was the champion, and he, there's only so much oxygen in the room, and he's stealing all the oxygen, right?
I was there before Conor.
Right. I mean, I know you were, but I mean, you were new to the UFC. Then once you started to peak, he's there now, right? And that kind of, do you feel like that may have hurt you in a way? And even like somebody like John Jones was getting a lot of attention at that point, right? And
I think all that is great, but I just go back to the matchmaking. Why wasn't I fighting ranked guys? I beat numerous guys that they put in front of me at 155 pounds. I beat them left and right, had some bad decisions go against me that people call the worst robberies of
right.
At 155, and I still couldn't get these ranked opponents. I didn't need them to put me in a commercial. I didn't need them to give me sponsorship. All I wanted, let me fight some ranked guys. Let me prove my worth. And they know by not letting you fight ranked guys and letting you fight the toughest guys outside of the top 15 is a huge slowdown on you. Because if I can't get a number by me, how this system works, if I can't get a ranking by me, I'm worth nothing. I have no negotiation power. I have nothing. There's nobody behind me because everybody can say, oh, the guys you beat are non-ranked or whatever,
Right.
So it's just on that, It wasn't that the UFC had to promote me, or just give me some good fights that I could get behind and fight these ranked guys.
The Darren Till fight, kind of the fight that turns you around, right? Because you get the knockout in the fight, you have the incident backstage with Leon afterwards. Whose idea was that a fight the UFC approached you with, or did one of your managers have that idea? How'd that come about?
Well, it was me and my manager, Ibrahim Cow, was just standing over there. But UFC couldn't get anybody to fight there. This is the only reason why I got to fight. Nobody wanted to fight there until. Nobody wanted to fight him. A couple opponents had already fallen out. He didn't have a dance partner. I was pleading with the UFC, and they were still like, oh, you know, I don't think so. Crunch time came. It was getting closer to the fight. They needed somebody, and they finally put me in there. Nobody really wanted to go to England and fight him as well, because you're not going to win a decision in England, especially against.
So you got to knock him out to win or submit him.
You got to knock him out or submit him to win. You're not going to win in England like that, especially against a star like Darren. So I took the fight, and they fucked up there, because then everything else came.
He's a big dude, right? And I mean, even though he's at 85 now, right? So, did you have any hesitation about the fight because of his size? You're both strikers, and he's a big guy.
I had been out for a year, and all I was thinking is, not my manager and stuff, but other people close to me were like, nah, don't take this fight. This is not the fight we want for you. We much rather you get an easier fight, get your groove back. You've been out for a year. In the back of my mind, all I was thinking is, if I am who I say I am, and I'm a fighter, and this is water and I'm a fish, and this is exactly the guy that I'm gonna fight. It doesn't matter if it's been a year or 3 years. I'm a striker as well. I know I could hold my own, and I had seen his fights, and I had saw things that matched up well with me. It was just, let's get after it,
When you finish the fight and you go backstage and you have your incident with, I think the knockout was going to be viral, and you're going to be big anyways. Then you do the thing with Leon Edwards. Did you know after that walked away, hey, I just did something that's going to change my life? I mean, were you aware of it right away?
No, not at all. I actually didn't even think the cameras were like rolling, because it's like a big camera here. So I didn't know that they were gonna. I didn't think the UFC would show that type of footage, to tell you the truth. I thought it'd be like, nobody's gonna know about this. It's gonna be in the hush hush, is my initial thoughts of it,
Right.
And especially the way the UFC was talking and stuff. Before I know it, man, it's everywhere. It's on Sports Center. My phone's blowing up.
Right.
Oh my gosh, it's freaking going nuts, getting viral. Anybody that's posting the video, that's reposting, is getting viral hits. So initially, I was like, I don't think they're gonna show something like that. I was wrong there.
So, do you think that fight in any way led to your relationship deteriorating with Colby? And I'll say it because of this. Colby kind of came up with the shtick of talking and doing all that stuff right around that same time, maybe, when he fought in Brazil. And do you feel like, he sees the attention going to his best friend and his, teammate and roommate, and all of a sudden, is he a little jealous of the success you're having? And
100%. At this time, we were no longer friends. He had already ripped off my coach after his Brazil fight. With Damian Maia, he fights RDA, which we get him ready for that fight. I'm in his corner, my coach is in his corner. He wins the fight, finally has some chance to pay my coach back. Guess what he pays him? Nothing. Doesn't pay him anything of the tab. Since then, I'm already like, F this guy, bro. And my coach is like, we're gonna get to fight him one day, don't you worry about it, and everything will be all right. So I'm not messing with him no more at this point. Yeah, he's still on interviews, which I have, someone's got the soundbite here. Jorge Masvidal's my best friend. Jorge Masvidal's my best friend. Jorge Masvidal's my best friend. As soon as I start to climb like this, he starts to take jabs, and I used to beat him in wrestling practice. I used to this. I used to that. His kids ain't shit. All that for what? Just to sell some pay-per-views, when he's the worst selling pay-per-view guy that there is on the roster. Numbers, I'm just talking numbers.
Right.
You see me, I'm not the highest selling pay-per-view. Connor sells more pay-per-views than me, but that's it. After that, it's me, and I don't have to do it. I don't have to attack nobody's wife, religion, or kids. So it just shows something for me and for the future generations. You don't have to promote yourself like a piece of shit to sell a pay-per-view, because it doesn't sell pay-per-views. You
made the point, you said, I'm a certain kind of guy. You stood up for your coach when you didn't have to do that, because that's your career, right? You're a fighter. You have a finite amount of time. You could say, that's my coach's deal. Let him fight it. Let him fight and get his money. I support him, but I'm not gonna. But you took that extra step. That a little character on your part, right? I mean, because you showed you're gonna stand up for what you believe in, even if it potentially could hurt you.
My coach is like my father, especially this individual. He's the one that saw the talent in me before anybody ever did. He's the one that pulled me aside and goes, "Relieve everything, all this garbage behind that you're dealing with, and come over here on this side. We could go far. We could win belts. You could make money. But I need you to just leave this lifestyle behind and come with me." And he was the first person to tell me that. First person to sit me down. He lives with me to this day. with me in my house. He's very well taken care of, and he never has to work a day in his life. That's how much I love this guy. So it goes much more beyond than him just being like a coach or something. This is like, I have a father that I love, but this is my other father, especially in the sports world. He still guides me every day. It's a very close relationship. So my initial reaction was, I wanted to get a bat and just hit Colby in the neck with it, and just show you what life is about. Since you want to be a thug, I'll show you what thugs do. And my coach begged and pleaded with me. He said, don't do that. We're going to fight him in the ring. You're going to knock his ass out. You're going to make a lot of money, and the whole world will see. And here we are, days away from that.
You know, the conventional wisdom always in MMA is when you have a striker versus a wrestler, that the wrestler is going to have the advantage going into the fight. Obviously, you two know each other very well. How have you been able to overcome his wrestling and sparring when you fought with him in the gym? You know, how were you able to overcome that? And was he as good a striker back in those days? You know, his wrestling seems to enable him to be a pretty good striker. Was he as good a striker back in those days?
He had zero striking in those days. Just, at least when we were going, 100% relied on his wrestling. It was like throw one punch, grab to the leg. When we started working out, I was at 155 pounds coming over from Strikeforce. He had just finished college. He was contemplating fighting at like 185, so he used to walk around like 200, 210, something like this. And there was a massive weight advantage, plus the wrestling pedigree that he had. So I didn't grow up wrestling. He did grow up wrestling. Right. So on the wrestling field, he could beat me consistently at 155 pounds, and he'd always want to train with me. When I came up to 170, and I had those 3-4 years of just having wrestled with good guys consistently, and I had that extra weight, our wrestling goals started to become far and few in between in the sparring sessions. I'm not saying I was beating him in wrestling, but man, he was sure huffing and puffing now. Right. It wasn't something that he was so used to, because I used to, at 155, I had a lot of weight to lose, and I had to maintain a strict diet. 170 was my natural weight. I had my weight and power behind me. So I would tell you this much, he didn't like training with me that much, and we basically stopped training when I was at 170 pounds, you know? So I've always said this, and I've always known, he's a decent hammer. Nail. He cannot take it, you know? Right. When he starts to take it, you see his face unfold. He's a front sprinter, but he's not the type of guy to bring in home the marathon, because he's not going to go through that.
Well, do you feel that happened in the first Usman fight, where, you know, he got off to a good start and then Usman came back and finished him off? Do you think that was a part of what you're saying?
That's a big part of it. With Woodley Alves as well. As soon as he got a little frustrated, I can't take this guy down. And I remember, because I cornered him in that fight, he was so scared to stand with Woodley Alves that he was saying like all types of weird things, like, if I can't take him down, I'll just drop guard or something like that. I'm like, you're a wrestler. What the f are you talking about dropping guard? He's like, no, because I could sweep him or something. I'm like, no. You put the wrestling pressure on him. Like, we were talking him through, and as soon as he got kicked, he said, nah, f this, and he gave him his neck. He didn't like get caught in it. He shot the thing, gave him his neck. Woodley cranked him out. He tapped and did the whole thing. Oh, my rib is bad. What? We didn't know your rib was bad, and I was in your camp the whole time. You're picking shit up again, you know? So I know the type of nail and hammer that he's not, you know. Like I said, he could be a decent hammer, but as soon as it gets a little bit like, oh man, this guy's fighting back into me, he knows how to fight, he folds.
The thing that I heard you say out there, you know, you're not going to be able to, your emotions aren't going to be able to get into this fight, but I find it hard to believe that, given the dislike you have for him. Like, you know, you're talking about, hey, I want to send him in a hospital in critical condition. I mean, that shows that you don't like this guy, right? And yet, you're going to control yourself in the ring when you see him and you know you're going to get your hands on him?
Same thing as Ben Askren. Same thing as there's a lot of these guys that I've fought, you know. Since I've been a professional, I've known that's the one day for me to have fun, man. It's not for me to do this too much or that too much. Because like in boxing, you know, if I'm like cocking it back too much, really trying to give you that death blow, it's not going to work, you know. So I know that the best me is the most in check version of me. I'll still be doing the same thing, playing mind games, smiling, moving, dancing, talking to him, all that stuff, but it's going to be the same me that is in all the fights. Because the moment I start to like, no, I want to do this or that, no, now my outcome is to leave him in the critical condition. But the way to do that is to keep my emotions in check. So just be a professional, go out there, beat the living breaks out of him, no emotions attached to it. After the fight, yeah, I'm going to eat extra cheeseburgers, I'm going to celebrate harder, but in the fight, I got too much writing on it, man. I just got to say as pro as it gets.
Two other questions here I wanted to ask you. So the great line that you came up with Ben Askren, the super necessary, when John Morgan asked you, you know, was it necessary to do that? I imagine if you had that opportunity against Colby, that it's going to be super necessary to do that, to add that extra one in.
I've been praying that on the way to pulling me off him, the referee slips on the banana peel, and I get to land some shots that really change Colby's life, and maybe he comes back a better person. You know, maybe he really gets it. Like, man, I don't need to do all this extra and just talk about anybody's kids or anything. And I send him off into that shadow realm for like an extended period of time. You know, so me landing those extra shots on Colby is super necessary. You know.
Lastly, you know, you obviously made yourself into a star with the Nate Diaz fight and other fights that we've talked about. If you beat Colby, that probably takes you up to another level. Where do you go from there? You've lost twice to the champion, like, so where do you go? Like, it seems like you don't have a path, you know, or are you just gonna have to cherry pick fights, kind of like Nate Diaz is doing now?
I'm not a cherry pick fight type of guy. So when I beat Colby, the plan is right to get back in Usman's face. You know, I got caught with a great shot. Man, in the first fight, he just didn't have any of that power, and then all of a sudden, 8 months later, he has supernatural power. Because I've never been knocked out in my career. Then all of a sudden, lands the best blow on me. I'm not saying I was winning until that point, but he wasn't able to really carry out his plan, which was wrestling. You know, I was able to get up, and when I got up, he was very tired. So I don't feel that that me going against Usman is something that won't happen. I just feel I got to take care of business with Colby. That's the person that I got in front of me. I'm gonna wipe him out the face of the earth, have that #1 ranking, and challenge for the Usman fight again. And I think it just makes for a better movie, and it just shows all my fans, everybody in the world, if you fail once, you fail twice. Doesn't mean you got to give up on your dreams. You still go at it 100%. You know. And I've learned a lot in those 2 fights with Usman. You know, he's also learned a lot about me. That his original thoughts were, man, I could take this guy down and control him and rely on that.
But no.
Not even on 6-day notice could you take me down and hold me down consecutively. I'll get back up to my feet. I'll find a way to get back up to my feet. Now, the first fight, I was in the best shape ever. I had way too much water to lose. And I thought, man, he's going to come and wrestle me hard the second one. I didn't never think he could land a shot like that, you know?
Sure. Awesome.